Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are ready to roll with our week 2 NFL picks, coming off of a relatively strong week 1. Feel pretty good about where the picks were in week 1. Above water and everything, straight up against the spread, over, under, all that fun stuff. So, yeah, we did fairly well in the pick'em. Did really well in fantasy this week. I can't wait to talk about my fantasy results. That's going to be awesome. The blind Canadian cat is currently with us, which is excellent. And I think my audio is also with us, which is, better than how we ended the first portion of the stream last week. So 2 thumbs up on that one. All right. So we're going to do what we always do and kick this recording portion off here. And we'll see how long my laptop is comfortable with 2 programs using my microphone at the same time. All right. Do this. And we're going to do this. And we are going to get things going, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to take a sip of my delicious tea. And I'm going to be watching that friggin' microphone thing like a hawk now to see if it happens to go out on me. All right. In 5, 4, 3. What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, fueled as always by the incredible folks at Nerd Tees, and welcome to week 2 of my weekly NFL football pick show for the 2023 NFL season and postseason, and we are off to a fairly solid start here in 2023 with picks that were above water across the board in week 1. So a lot of times in week 1's past, we have done well straight up, but then the betting picks have lagged behind, or the betting picks might be all right, but then straight up, not quite where we want to be. Pretty well across the board in week 1, had ourselves a solid outing. 9-7 straight up. I've talked about it for years. You always want to be at that double digits straight up. I wasn't there obviously in week 1, but 9-7. I'm not going to poo-poo 9-7 too much. We're okay with that. Also 9-7 against the spread in week 1, which I am comfortable with for sure. And even on the total picks, how bad has anyone ever had a betting run as bad as me with total plays in the last year and a half? Like, they've been awful. So to start the NFL season 8-8 on the totals, I will take that all day long. 8-8 in week 1. Again, 9-7 straight up, 9-7 against the spread. We feel like we're in a decent little spot here heading into week 2 off of what was a super exciting week 1. Like, that was a great week 1 of NFL football. Feeling really good about where everything is. Now, in my focus, my featured picks, I suppose is what I'll wind up calling them, the Thursday night game, the Sunday night game, the Monday night game, and of course the Packers game, didn't exactly go swimmingly for me on the featured games. Thursday night, I had Kansas City beating Detroit. Obviously, Detroit came up with a 21-20 win in that game, so it was a straight up loss against the spread loss, as I had, I believe, -5 on the Chiefs, and I had that game hitting over, and it certainly did not. So that didn't exactly go well. Made up some ground on the Packers game. The Packers did beat Chicago 38-20, which means it was a straight up win as well as an against the spread win, as I had the Packers, I think, +2.5. I'm not 100% sure really why they were, more than maybe a point or a half point either way in that game, but we'll take it. The total play was a loss. The under was looking pretty good for a while. Didn't exactly work out in the end. Then, of course, we had the Giants getting blown out by Dallas. I can't believe I took the Giants straight up in that game. Why didn't you people stop me? The Giants get blown out 40-0 against Dallas. I straight up loss against the spread loss. Now, I did get the total there as I stuck with the under, and it only got to 40 points because the Giants didn't score. And then, of course, Monday night, we're going to talk plenty about Monday night. and Buffalo losing to the New York Jets 22-16 in overtime. Of course, that being the Aaron Rodgers Achilles game, as it will come to be known now. Straight up loss against the spread loss, but another win on the total as my under did wind up hitting. So not great in those featured games, but obviously we're just getting into the swing of this new format. So hopefully those will improve. We got some people in the chat here already. Gorian saying week 2 picks NFL, Tampa, New Orleans money line, Philadelphia, Miami money line. I'm assuming that those are probably parlays. Chad is already in the chat going, good picks already, eh? Kat says, I'm alive. Gorian, your Packers got lucky having made the Rodgers trade. Well, I mean, look, I don't know if that injury happens if Aaron Rodgers is still, playing with Green Bay. Obviously, you never really know. But boy, like that's so tough. Kat saying no tell Justin about my tweet. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means, Kat. You're gonna have to explain that one a little bit more. Never lost hope on Jets money line. Chad saying I took Miami and the Rams and the Raiders, but got burned on Buffalo. Hi, Chad from Regina, Saskatchewan. I'm Justin from Bridgewater, Nova Scotia. Andrew's in the chat saying you got your voice back. I definitely did. So Kat is again going on about this tweet, and I have absolutely no idea what that tweet is. So we're going to move on, and we're just going to let Kat have their fun. In the Bridgewater's finest pick'em pool, bit of a slow start compared to again a massive field that we have in the pick'em to start the season. 51 people in that pick'em pool already. Of course, the information is down below if you want to join as well. I sit tied for 31st out of 51, so kind of in that meaty part of the curve. 72 of 136 confidence points brought in week 1. It's just a little under 53%. Obviously not where you would want to be, but somebody that is exactly where they want to be on a championship pace is our week 1 winner and overall leader, my good friend Half Moon's Picks. 10-6 straight up picking the games in week 1, 101 of 136 possible confidence points. That's a clip of over 74%. So my good friend Half Moon is off to a great start in the pick'em pool. We're going to take a peek now into Fantasy Corner, which is, of course, brought to you by the Dynasty Trade Calculator. Ladies and gentlemen, the Dynasty Trade Calculator is one of the absolute best resources available to you for players of Dynasty, keeper, and long-term fantasy football. It's a great resource for player evaluations, trade evaluations, rankings, podcasts, tons of great experts available to you on the Dynasty Trade Calculator. As I've mentioned, it has helped me win Dynasty championships in the past, and for as little as a cup of coffee, you can gain access to one of the absolute best resources available online for those Dynasty and long-term fantasy football managers out there. The Dynasty Trade Calculator. Check my affiliate link, which is down below, and get access to this incredible tool. So, like I mentioned, off to a solid start in fantasy in 2023. I went 6-2 across my 8 teams, including winning both of my Dynasty League matchups in week 1. My best ball team's currently sitting at number 3 and number 9 overall. So one of those teams lagging behind. The other one, is in a money position in 3rd place. So we feel pretty decent about that. In the Professionals Dynasty Fantasy Football, I picked up the win against Chris in week 1, about a 35-point win, so it was a solid victory for my side. And in the Ante & Co. Dynasty League, I blew Carmine out of the water, hitting nearly 200 fantasy points in that matchup. That one was not close, pretty well from the end of the 2 p.m. games, so a very solid win for me in that pool as well. I have week 2 matchups against Anthony in the Professionals Dynasty, good friend of mine from way back in high school, and a week 2 matchup against Tensa in the Ante & Co. pool. For Anthony, it's a projected loss for me right now, but then again, so was the matchup last week against Chris. And in the Ante & Co. pool, the Tensa matchup is currently too close to call, so I'm really looking forward to those 2 fantasy football matchups this week. And as a reminder, if you go down to the description of this live stream, of the VOD, of the podcast episode, wherever you interact with this show, you can find all of my results from last week, all of my straight up against the spread and over under plays for week 2 in the NFL. You're going to find information on joining the Bridgewater's Finest Pick'em Pool for season 12. Yes, season 12 of this show. You're going to find information on joining the NFL YouTube Prognosticators Facebook page and information on my great friends and longtime sponsors at Nerd Tees. Ladies and gentlemen, nerdtees.ca is where you need to go to find dozens and dozens of incredible loose leaf tea, estate coffee, and flavored coffee blends. No matter what your taste palette is, nerdtees.ca has got a great option for you. And when you go to nerdtees.ca, you're going to want to use my promo code, which is BWFinest. That is going to save you 15% at checkout. You're also going to get free shipping on any order over $100 within Canada. Of course, if you're in the United States, you're going to get a great conversion rate on the US dollar. Today's blend is a brand new one, basically, for me, just my second cup of this ever. It is maple peach, and that sounds like a taste combination that shouldn't work. It shouldn't go together, but boy, when you brew a hot cup of maple peach, you're going to find that this is a combo that goes together really well. And no, it's not just because I'm Canadian. Maple peach, it's a great option. Like I say, it's a newer option for me, but you can find all kinds of great stuff on nerdtees.ca. Promo code's BWFinest, going to save your 15%, going to get your free shipping. Find yourself something to love, or find someone you love something to love. Look, it's Christmas. It's basically the Christmas season now. If it's September, it's the Christmas season. That's the way we do things in North America. It is never too early to start your Christmas shopping, and a great place to start it is nerdtees.ca. Use that promo code, save your money, find yourself something to love, find someone you love something to love. You can do it on nerdtees.ca. Did you see that there? Look how quickly we blew through that early stuff. Look how easy this is becoming. I love it. All right. So before we get on to the picks for week 2, we're going to hit the chat and talk to some of y'all folks. Andrew saying, I got my voice back. Yes, I definitely got my voice back. And we're just going to give us one of these and hope that it lasts for the entire stream. Martin, my good friend Martin, is finally back here in the chat with us here in week 2. I'll be in and out because I'm working currently. Keep up the good work, Justin. Hi, everyone. Hi, Martin. Thank you so much for taking the time to stop in, my friend. I really, really appreciate it. Reed Kelly is in the chat saying, how did the Seahawks only get like 3 yards in the second half? What is going on there? They completely fell apart in the second half. I didn't watch a ton of that game, but the highlights and stuff that I did watch is like, what is this play calling? What is going on? It makes absolutely no sense to me. And I know that that's a better offense, obviously, than what they showed in the second half of that football game. They had that game. I'm not going to say they had it in hand because there was way too much time left, but they were certainly on their way to a relatively decisive win there in week 1. And then all of a sudden, it turns on a dime. And maybe the Rams are a little bit better than we thought they were. I don't think they're a lot. I don't think they're a lot better than we thought they were, but I think they're a bit, maybe. But maybe the Seahawks weren't all that I kind of cracked them up to be there in week 1. Let's see. Andrew, the Jets are like the AEW injury list. No, the Jets don't go out and intentionally try to hurt themselves. That's what makes them different from anybody on the roster in AEW who's not named MJF. That's my wrestling fan in me coming out there. Tea besides coffee is the best drink for breakfast. I agree, 100%. It's Halloween time for me, not Christmas. See, that's the time it should be. But then you walk into every store and it's like, oh, look, they're putting their Christmas stuff out already. And I'm no different. My store is exactly the same. Let's see. Kat in the chat. Let's eat some dubs on this week, too. I want to do the Jameis Winston hand thing, but I don't want to be on camera doing the Jameis Winston hand thing. So I tell you what, if I go... If I hit double digits against the spread this week, on next week's stream, I'll do the Jameis Winston eat the W. Put it that way. If I hit double digits against the spread, Jameis Winston eat the W on camera next week. All right, Chad, my 5th year with you guys, the weather guy. I appreciate you, Chad. I looked into the weather. In most of these games. There's like a couple of them. There was like a 25% chance of rain, but it looks like we're going to be relatively clear on weather this weekend. At least it seems like hopefully we will be. I mean, that hurricane coming up the coast, you never really know, but hopefully we should be all right. Andrew also saying my work is already Christmas stuff in the back and ready for November. Yeah, man, it's just like if it's not out already, it's like ready to be deployed. It would be depressing if it wasn't so cheery and magical because it's Christmas. All right. Let's dig right into things now with our week 2 picks. I mean, obviously, one of the big storyline coming out of week 1 is the Aaron Rodgers injury. We know he's now done for the season. Obviously, that is not the only storyline that we are going to be taking a look at this week, whether injury related or anything else. One thing I'm going to hit you with before we get started. There were 4 teams in week 1 only 4 teams who did both of these things, generated 350 yards of offense, and held their opponent to under 250. So 350 on offense, under 250 on defense. Only 4 teams did both of those things in week 1. Those 4 teams are the LA Rams, somehow, the San Francisco 49ers. That makes sense. The Minnesota Vikings, interesting because they lost that game, and the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns, as a matter of fact, the number 1 total defense after week 1. Now, obviously, weather assisted in that game for sure, but holy cow. Like nobody, at least 2 of the names on that list, nobody would have thought of. Maybe 3. It's crazy how week 1 happens to go. But we are now into week 2, and let's get into these picks. So we kick things off, obviously, with our first feature game of the week, Thursday Night Football, the Minnesota Vikings traveling to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. Now, the Eagles, they got the W last week, a very highly competitive game with the New England Patriots. And I think, like, I looked at that number, and for the longest time, that number was only like 4.5, 4, 5. I think it closed at like -4. And I'm looking at it going like, why is this number -4? Like it's the Philadelphia Eagles. I think the final in that game was 25-20. So I guess Vegas kind of knows what they're talking about. Like that was a much closer game than I thought. And all respect to the New England Patriots, who I think accomplished something very big in that first week, even though they didn't come away with the victory. Now, the Eagles, their backfield looking like a bit of a mess. You had, was it Rashad Penny, who wound up being a healthy scratch in that game. And then just like how everybody drew it up, Kenny Gainwell winds up basically operating as the lead back over DeAndre Swift. It's just one of those things that it just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. I mean, look, props to Kenny Gainwell. I'm a Kenny Gainwell fan. I'm happy that dude wound up being the lead back, but like what's going on with that offense, man? It's just weird, but they did wind up getting the W. And again, the Minnesota Vikings, they had a very winnable game in week 1 against Tampa Bay. I'm obviously not very high on Tampa Bay this year. And I mean, Justin Jefferson was eating them alive in the first half of that game. Jordan Addison gets his first touchdown catch. It looks like it's smooth sailing for Minnesota until it's not, and they wind up losing that game. So again, 2 kind of dissimilar but similar kind of feelings about these teams coming out of their week 1 games, where it's like, yeah, Philly got the win, but looked nowhere near as good as people thought they would, I guess. And the Vikings playing like they should have gotten the win and winding up on the wrong end of a 20-17 score. So I'm not willing to move either of these teams kind of up or down. That's going to be something I'm going to look at a little bit this week, is whether I would move a team up or down in my original kind of tier rankings that I gave you last week. I've got to stick with the Eagles here. I mean, the first game at home, it's going to be their home opener, and the crowd there is going to be electric. So I just can't imagine the Eagles fans going out in front of that crowd and losing a very winnable game against an NFC opponent. So let's go ahead and grab the Philadelphia. Oh, sorry, folks. We have a phone call. It must be somebody from the Vikings front office calling me to complain about the fact that I'm not picking them. So we're going to take Philadelphia at home to get the win here over the Minnesota Vikings. Apologies for the phone call. On the line right now, the Eagles are laying 6.5 points as the home favorite. This did just dip down from, it was 7.5 when I first looked at it yesterday. It dipped down to 7. It is now dipped down to 6.5. So it feels like there's either money or volume coming in on that Vikings taking the points. So yeah, he told him to get rid of Kirk Cousins. Yeah, I'll be sure to pass the message along. Boy, I think what this ultimately comes down to is I don't think I trust the Vikings. I understand that Philly could possibly be without at least one of their corners, if not two, in this game, which should certainly open things up for Jefferson and Addison, and of course Alexander Mattison in the run game as well. Now that I'm sitting here looking at it, I'm not as confident on it as I was a few minutes ago. You know what? I think I'm going to call an audible on that. Why don't we go ahead and take those points? I think this is more a situational play than anything else, especially where you might see the Eagles without a top corner or two. I think maybe if this develops into a shootout, which I do believe that it will, this is kind of hold your nose territory, but I am going to take those points. Take the plus 6.5 with Minnesota, hedging our bets. Total in the game set at 49. I'm definitely on the over here on these points, over 49 points in Philly, Minnesota. Let's take a final score of 31-26 in favor of the Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles win, but the Vikings are going to cover and give me over on the 49-point total. See, we can make those snap decisions on the fly there. It's got to make sense, but we can do it. Andrew in the chat saying Super Bowl hangover for the Eagles and Chiefs. Possibly. Maybe. Brian Stafora is not happy about what I just did. No, Justin, don't do it. Philly with the points at home. You just said it. Electric. Taking the points. We're sticking with it. Taking the points. All right, let's fly through a couple more here. We got the Raiders on the road in Buffalo taking on the Bills. Bills coming into this game, obviously, on the short week, having just played last night. The Raiders coming off of a win in week 1, a win that I called. And they're also on the tail end of back-to-back road games, which obviously I do not love. Kind of crossing the country there to play a Buffalo Bills team that has to be very not pleased with the fact that they did not win that game in week 1. And I would include myself among them. Like, watching that game, the second that Rodgers got hurt, you could see it in their play calling that, like, and I put this on Twitter, they were going for the knockout punch, but it's round 4 in a game that is definitely going all 12 rounds. So, like, they're going for a knockout punch so early and they got so aggressive. And what happened? Josh Allen, one of the more reckless quarterbacks in the NFL, winds up throwing, what was it, 3 interceptions to the same guy? And they have a bunch of turnovers. I think they were -3 in the turnover differential. They wind up losing the game in overtime. Once the game gets to overtime, and they had to force that game to go to overtime, anything can happen. And anything did happen. 65-yard punt return touchdown. All of a sudden, they're on the losing end of things. Play that game over from the point that Rodgers gets hurt 100 times, and I think Buffalo wins it like 95 times. But the way they tried to go about it shot themselves in the foot. They have another opportunity here against an opponent that's abjectly not as good as them. They absolutely positively have this is a must-win game in week 2. They shouldn't be at this point, but it's a must-win game in week 2. I think they're going to go out and get that job done. Give me the Buffalo Bills at home to get the win over the Raiders. Buffalo's laying 8.5 points against the spread in this game at home against a Raiders team that had a low scoring, close game last week. I don't think this game flies in terms of the score. I think this is going to be relatively close. I'm going to take those 8.5 points. That feels kind of bad. I think the possibility for a blowout is certainly here, but I absolutely need to see the Buffalo Bills play like the Buffalo Bills before I lay that kind of points on them. Even against some of the worst teams in the league. 8.5, to me, it's a little too much. So I'm taking the plus 8.5 on the Raiders. Total in this game set at 46.5 points. Like I said, I'm not expecting a shootout here. Give me the under in this one, under 46.5 in Raiders Bills. Give me 23-17 in favor of Buffalo. Bills win, Raiders cover. It might be a backdoor cover, but I'm still going to take the Raiders to cover and give me under on the points. The Baltimore Ravens at the Cincinnati Bengals. What an interesting matchup this has become just in the span of the first week. The Ravens coming into this game off of a win in week 1, but they lost big time on the injury side of things. J.K. Dobbins at running back for Baltimore, perhaps the unluckiest player in the history of pro football. Another season-ending injury. Dobbins ruptures his Achilles, tears his Achilles. He's out for the season. So, look, it looks like it's going to be the Gus Edwards / Justice Hill / maybe Melvin Gordon / maybe they go sign somebody else show. And it just feels like it's the same story for the Ravens backfield every single season because it kind of is. Because it's J.K. Dobbins and the guy just can't stay healthy. I feel terrible for him because I'm a really big fan of his. The Bengals looked awful. They looked terrible, really, really bad in that game. Weather assisted for sure. Joe Burrow couldn't get a great grip on the ball. Was very obvious. It was very obvious that he had almost no reps, if any reps, in the preseason. All of those things were very obvious in week 1. I think given the Dobbins injury, look, the Bengals are another team. Like, look, I say it right in the description about AFC heavyweights. The Bengals are another team that cannot afford to start the season 0-2. Can't do it. The AFC is going to be too competitive at the end of the season. You can't afford to start the season 0-2. So I'm going to take the Bengals here. Division matchup, two teams that know each other very well. Give me the Cincinnati Bengals at home to get back on track here. Bengals beat the Ravens in Cincinnati. On the line, Cincinnati's laying -3. I like them to win. It's a relatively small price to pay. I'm going to lay those 3 points on the Bengals. Total in the game, an identical 46.5 to the previous game. I'm going to go under on this one as well. I think these are two teams predicated on very solid pass rushes and front sevens, good defense. I think defense winds up winning the day, but I'm just going to take the Bengals a little bit more. Give me the under on the 46.5 points. Let's go 24-20 in favor of the Bengals. Bengals win, Bengals cover, but give me the under. The Seattle Seahawks at the Detroit Lions. The Lions kicking off the 2023 season with a monster 1-point win against the Kansas City Chiefs. Kadarius Toney assisted in that game, but look, they still got the win. They went out and got the job done. The Seattle Seahawks looked awful, like we mentioned, in the second half, and Seattle is the first team that I'm actually going to do something about with my tiered rankings that I gave you in week 1. I'm demoting the Seattle Seahawks until I see it. They had a full complement. Zach Charbonnet did not look good running the ball. I don't think Jackson Smith and the Jigbo was all that involved in the offense. They looked good in the first half. They did not look good at all in the second half. Geno Smith needs to turn it around. I am downgrading the Seattle Seahawks from the second tier down to the third tier. From what I saw in week one, that's a fringe team. It's not a Super Bowl, or not a Super Bowl, a playoff contender, at least not right now. That's a fringe team that I watched last week. So we're downgrading the Seattle Seahawks. Detroit, they got the benefit of the long week coming into this one. Feels like they're relatively healthy. Their tight end, there's Sam Laporta. Every snap of that game that I watched, I looked at Sam Laporta and I was like, when did they get TJ Hawkinson back? Because that dude is big. That dude is a kid, but built like a man. Like, that's a big dude. I think he is going to have an incredible season. And I think Detroit's defense, and Andrew just kind of pointed it out in the chat, I think their defense is a little underrated as well. I really like the Detroit Lions in this matchup at home to get the win, start their season 2-0. Let's take Detroit to beat Seattle. On the line, Detroit is laying -5.5 against the spread, the exact same amount that the Seahawks were laying against the spread against the Rams last week. I'm going to bite on that a second time, and I'm going to lay that 5.5 points on the Detroit Lions. I feel very confident about that team, especially on the offensive side of the ball. So give me the -5.5 on Detroit. Total in the game set at 47.5 points, but this is another one where I think it's going to be relatively close, but I'm going to stick under. We're going to stay under the 47.5 point total. Give me 27-17 in favor of the Detroit Lions. Lions win, Lions cover, and give me the under on the points, but it's a fairly close number. And the Tennessee Titans at home playing host to the Los Angeles Chargers. And welcome to the second team that I'm going to downgrade. So I also had the Chargers in that, playoff contender tier last week. I'm downgrading them not because of what they did on offense. The offensive output was incredible. What a shootout with the Miami Dolphins in week one. Super, super entertaining football game. So it's not because of that. I'm downgrading them because, my God, it's the same old Chargers. They're going to find new and incredible ways to lose football games. Not even like, oh, it's a football game they should have won. Like, no, I thought Miami was going to win that game from the jump. But they're going to find new and incredible ways to come so close and snatch victory, or have snatch defeat, from the jaws of victory. That's just who this team is. And from the jump, I ain't going to let him break my heart. I ain't doing it. I've done it for multiple seasons now. I ain't doing it this year. I'm downgrading the LA Chargers, but against Tennessee, who I only thought looked like marginally decent in their game last week. And I mean, if my buddy Keith was in here, he'd be talking about it. Like, they didn't get the benefit of a call that they probably should have gotten. If we're being perfectly honest, they probably should have gotten that call, and it did play a big role in them losing that game. I think I still have to, even though I downgraded the Chargers, I still think I have to take the Chargers here on the road. I think that offense is high-powered enough that if this gets into something of a shootout, I don't think Tennessee keeps pace. So I'm going to take the Chargers on the road in Tennessee to get the win, their first win of the season. Chargers beat the Titans. On the line, Tennessee is taking +3 as a home dog. I like the Chargers to win. It's relatively small price to pay. Give me the -3 on the Chargers. Total in the game set at 46. I do believe this total goes over. Relatively good total, but I do think the game gets to 50 points. So over 46 in LA, Tennessee. Let's go 30-21 Chargers. Chargers win. Chargers cover, and give me the over on the points. So before we skip ahead a little bit and talk about Sunday Night Football, which is not Sunday Night Football, the Packers game, which is our next feature game, we're going to just take a pop into the chat here and take a look at what's being said. The Blind Canadian Cat. It's like with Washington -7 last week. Based on how the Bills played week one, they got to prove they can cover big spreads. That's exactly how I feel. I gotta see them play like the Bills before I pick with them like the Bills, for sure. Andrew, the winner of Cincinnati and Baltimore game will get in the playoffs. I like that. I like that kind of call just after week one. Chad is on plus 3.5 for the Ravens, which Andrew agrees with. Brian Stafora says Cincy rebounds. I agree. Cat, keep an eye on Keaton Mitchell. He's on IR right now, but he should come back after that and could fight for a role in that offense. Very nice. Chad, Seattle, 5 wins in a row. I took Detroit minus 5.5. Detroit hungry, different team. I agree. Motor City Dan Campbell has got them biting kneecaps. Andrew, Detroit's defense already better than they were last year. Lions may represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. Wouldn't be. I've seen crazier things than that. Chad, Tennessee, done. I took the Chargers at -3. And Andrew saying the Titans need to cut Ryan Tannehill and draft a quarterback in 2024. Delicious, delicious tea. All right, the Green Bay Packers on the road for their second straight game to start the season. They travel to Atlanta to take on Desmond Ridder and the Atlanta Falcons. A battle of me against Chris. What else could you ask for? So, both of these teams coming out on the winning side of things last week. Obviously, Green Bay with a big win, 38-20 over the Chicago Bears, and Atlanta getting the job done as well. I think it was 2017 against Carolina, something like that. So, both teams coming off wins. Like I said, Green Bay on the tail end of back-to-back road games. What I'm also going to do for both of these teams, not only are they coming off of wins, I'm taking both of these teams and I'm upgrading them. I thought Atlanta's offense played much better than I expected them to. I thought the defense played better than I expected them to. I think Bijan Robinson is a monster. I think they use Bijan and Tyler Allgeier very, very effectively in their backfield. And look, I'm not going to sit here and say I wasn't crazy impressed by the fact that Jordan Love threw 3 touchdowns. Yes, it was against Chicago. I understand that's not a good football team, but it's a division rival. There's bad blood in that matchup. And the fact that Jordan Love went into a hostile environment, because look, what did Aaron Rodgers always say about Chicago? Hey, Chicago, I own you. Jordan Love, in his first start in Chicago, goes in there, engineers a 38-20 win, throws 3 touchdowns, made very, very, very few mistakes. And most of his throws looked very, very good. And that was without his top receiving option. So I was exceptionally impressed with Jordan Love. I'm elevating both of these teams. I think Atlanta should be looked at as the favorite in that division. I'm not sold on the Saints. I'm not sold on Tampa. They just beat Carolina. I think Atlanta should be looked at as the front runner in that division. And I think the NFC North is going to be real interesting this year. Detroit is very good. I think Green Bay is going to be right there with them most of the season. So I'm elevating both of those teams. In saying that, I think the way that I'm going to lean on this one, and I'm not just going to pick Green Bay in every game this year, because there's going to be games I'm just going to be like, I'd have no objectivity if I took Green Bay to win this game. But I think this is another winnable game for Green Bay. This is a significant step up in opposition for Atlanta, because there's a big difference between Carolina and Green Bay. There's also a big difference, obviously, between Chicago and Atlanta. But top to bottom, I just feel like the Green Bay Packers have a slightly better roster. I think the defense is a little bit better. I think the offense is better, and the offense has more weapons. Yeah, Drake London, great, but they're not really involving him in the offense the way they should be when you have a guy like Drake London. Kyle Pitts, yes, but they're not really involving him the way you should involve a guy like Kyle Pitts in your offense. The only thing that gives me moment to pause here is the possibility that we might not see Aaron Jones in this game. If it's AJ Dillon, that does give me a moment to pause, but I feel like that's factored into this line against the spread. I'm going to go ahead and grab the Packers here on the road in Atlanta. Packers get the win to go to 2-0. Very, very solid start to the season. And look, if they can go into their bye at 3-1, I feel like Green Bay's in a pretty good position. So let's take the Packers on the road in Atlanta to get the win over the Falcons. On the line, Atlanta is taking plus 1.5 against the spread. So a very, very slight home dog. Obviously, I like Green Bay to win. So give me the minus 1.5. Total in the game set at 40.5 points. I think coming off of a game where Green Bay was involved and they put 58 points on the board in total in that game, it's tough for me to stay under such a low number in this one. So I'm going to have to go over on this. Give me over 40.5 points in Green Bay, Atlanta. Let's go 23-21 in favor of the Green Bay Packers. Packers win. Packers cover by the slightest of margins, and give me the over on the points by a relatively small margin. Super tight, super entertaining football game on the way to us from Atlanta. All right, time to fire through 4 more games here. The Chicago Bears on the road in Tampa to take on the Bucks. The Tampa Bay Bucks, like I mentioned, picking up the win over Minnesota in week 1, a win I did not think that they were going to get. Chicago, the aforementioned 3-possession loss, it would have been against Green Bay. And look, that was not the Chicago team as a whole that obviously we're going to see in a couple of weeks. That's a team that still needs to come together very clearly. We know that Justin Fields is a better quarterback than that. We know that DJ Moore is a larger part of the offense than what he was in that game. I think he only had 3 or 4 targets. So, I mean, like, he needs to be more involved. They traded the first overall pick and got him back as part of the compensation for it. So we know that they're going to need to use him way more and way better than they did in week 1. And I think they're going to. Their backfield is really interesting. I think Roschon Johnson towards the end of the season could wind up being the lead back in that backfield. I really like the way he played that week 1 game against Green Bay. Tampa Bay, look, Mike Evans got that touchdown. That's nice. We understand that he's basically out the door. While I do kind of agree with Chad in the chat that Tampa Bay top to bottom is probably still a better roster, like kind of some of the residual leftovers from when Brady was there. And I think top to bottom, they are probably a better roster. But I'm going to take the upset here. I'm going to take the Chicago Bears. I think this Bears team is significantly better than what we saw in week 1. I think they go out in week 2 on the road, and I think they prove that. This is my first upset pick of this week, but I'm going to take the Chicago Bears on the road in Tampa to get the win over the Bucks. And if this has to be a Justin Fields win, it's going to be a Justin Fields win. On the line, Tampa's laying -3. Obviously, I'm taking Chicago, so I'll take the points +3 on the Bears. Total in the game, 41.5 points. Such a low total. I'm going to inch over on this one, over 41.5 points in Tampa Bay, Chicago. Let's go Bears 24, Bucks 23. Bears win in the upset. Give me the points, and I'll take the over. The Kansas City Chiefs in Jacksonville to take on the Jags. Kansas City obviously has the benefit of the long week, having played in the opening Thursday night game. The Jacksonville Jaguars, coming off of a win in week 1, has to feel good for Trevor Lawrence and the crew there in Jacksonville. This is another matchup kind of like Buffalo, where like I can't picture a scenario where the Chiefs start the season 0-2. So my play on this is entirely based on that. Are the Jags good enough to start the season 2-0? Absolutely they are. I think on offense and on defense. We saw exactly what Calvin Ridley still has left in the tank in that game in week 1. We saw Etienne play well. We saw Tank Bigsby play well in a limited role. That offense is going to be good. It's going to be very good. I just can't picture the Chiefs starting the season 0-2. Same deal. If they start the season 0-2, the AFC is way too competitive. You can't, like, these AFC juggernauts all losing in week 1. They're in no win situations. They have to win in week 2. So we're going to lean on the Chiefs in this one. Let's take Kansas City on the road in Jacksonville to beat the Jags. This is a big step up in competition for the Jags. I'm going to take Kansas City. On the line, the Jags are taking 3 points here as a home dog. You get the Chiefs -3. Like, I think you're going to have to take that. And Chad just made a really good point in the chat. Chad just made the point of some teams need to lose just to get going. And there was an MMA fighter that I remember from way back, Chris Lieben. Chris Lieben said flat out, I need to get punched in the face a few times to flip that switch and get going. And that just might be what Kansas City needs. They needed to get popped in the mouth in week 1, which they did. And I think they're going to turn around and go back to looking exactly like the Chiefs, because that's just what this team is. So give me the Chiefs straight up. Give me the Chiefs -3. Total in the game set at 51. I don't think this has a hope in hell of staying under the point total. I think this gets to 60. So give me the over on the 51 points. Kansas City 34, Jacksonville 26. Bit of a track meet, but let's take the Chiefs to get the win, cover against the spread, and give me the over. The Indianapolis Colts and the Houston Texans. Not going to spend a lot of time on this except for the fact that it is Anthony Richardson versus CJ Stroud, which makes it a very interesting quarterback matchup, very young quarterback matchup, obviously. Two young teams, two teams trying to figure out if they know how to win. And I don't think either of these teams right now really knows how to win. It's an interesting, like, the line on this is very close. It's only 1.5 points. So I think Vegas doesn't even really know how to go on this one. It's like, it really genuinely feels like it could go either way. I did not like the way Houston employed their run game in week 1. Now, granted, I mean, it's a game that they lost by whatever it was, 16 points. Still only 2 possessions. I really didn't feel like they got Dameon Pierce going in that game. I think we see more of him this week. But between the two teams, I do feel like the Colts have the better defense. So I'm going to lean on that Colts defense to ride to a victory here. Let's take the Colts on the road in Houston to get the win over the Texans. On the line, Indianapolis is laying -1.5 here as a road favorite. Road favorites have been hitting so far in the NFL in week 1. I think they were 4-1 against the spread in week 1. So give me the -1.5 on Indy. And Andrew makes a great point. I hope Anthony Richardson is okay with his knee. So this is taking a little bit of a gamble, but that's why you've got a guy like Gardner Minshew as the backup quarterback. He's a very capable backup quarterback. So even if he does have to go in, I think he's still capable of leading that team to a win. So give me the -1.5 on Indianapolis. And the total in the game set at 40. It's just too low for me to stay under on it, even though it's two not very good teams. Give me the over on the 40. We're going to go like 23-20 on this one. Indy gets the win. Indy covers and hold the nose, but give me the over on the 40-point total. And the San Francisco 49ers in Los Angeles to take on the Rams, a matchup of two teams that won their games last week. One you would have expected to, the other one, maybe not so much. The 49ers, a dominant display in week 1, a fantastic game from them, top to bottom. The offense looked really good. That pass rush looks disgustingly good. There's so many elements of that Niners team to like. Brock Purdy looks like he hasn't missed a step from late in the season last season. He looks just as good as he was before, and they had that faith in him to get rid of a guy they spent the 3rd overall pick on. So we know he's the guy, and he certainly looked like it in week 1. The Rams, again, shocking to me that they won that game. Maybe I underrated them a little bit. I'm not willing to bump them up yet. I need to see it happen more than once, but it is officially Puka time, man. It's Puka Nakua or Nakwa? I don't know how his last name is pronounced, but stepping right into the Cooper Kupp role and just like getting all of Cooper Kupp's targets. Like, incredible. Just a fantastic showing for him. And if he can continue that along with Tutu Atwell, then they've got something there in the receiving core until Cooper Kupp comes back. I certainly thought it was going to be Van Jefferson as the kind of elder statesman now in that receiver room. But man, like, Puka was incredible. And we'll see what he does for an encore. This is the tail end of back-to-back road games for the Niners, so that is certainly something to take into account. But look, San Francisco, LA, yes, it's a rivalry, but how much of a road game is it really? So I think we're going to go ahead and grab the Niners in this one. They're just objectively the better football team, probably and arguably the best team in the league right now. So let's take the Niners on the road to get the win over the Rams. Now, they're laying -8 against the spread on the road. So if this game was at home, what would they give? What would they give them? A 10.5 in a division game? Rough. It's. I had to think about this one long and hard, but I think I am going to lay the -8. It's under double digits. They're objectively an incredible football team. I don't think the Rams are for real. I think they met an opponent that just didn't want to play in the second half. So that's not going to be the Niners. So we're going to go ahead and lay the -8 on San Francisco. Total in the game set at 44.5 points. I think we grab the over in this one. I think it pushes right up against 50, which should be enough to hit the over in this one. So over 44.5 points. Let's go 33-16 for the Niners. We'll have them double them up. Niners win, Niners cover, and give me the over on the points. All right, let's check back in with chat here as we approach the 1 hour mark of the stream. Won't be the 1 hour mark of the podcast episode, but of the stream. Let's see. Andrew Warren thinks Desmond Ridder is very underrated. Kat comes right back saying, I'm not sold on him yet. I'm not quite sold on him yet either. I think he's got talent, but I need to see more for sure. Chad took Green Bay -1. Atlanta will make it a close game, field goal game, I think. Like it. Andrew, Jordan Love could be a dark horse MVP. See, now you're appealing just to me directly, and I appreciate that. Let's see. Andrew says he was impressed with Baker Mayfield, making smart decisions. I agree with Justin Fields. If he gets cut in Chicago, then he can be, I think you meant to say like an in-demand player somewhere else. I don't think Chicago would cut him. What would be the financial implications of cutting Justin Fields? I would have to think it would be pretty big, at least right now. That's interesting, though. Martin says he'd like to see the Bears beat the Bucks, too. Brian, bet the house, Kansas City not going 0-2. If Travis Kelce plays, I think KC wins big. That comes from Andrew. Chad chimes in. KC's also won 7 in a row in that matchup. Let's see. Andrew, Rams are going to bounce back and going back to the playoffs. Interesting. I'm definitely not sold on that happening, but I mean, it certainly could. 49ers have 2 wins in a row against the Rams, but he took the Rams at +8. Matt, the NFL fanatic, is in the chat. Matt, thank you so much for joining us. 5th round pick from the University of Washington. Gorian, Puka Nakua, as it sounds. I was right the first time. Excellent. Pittsburgh, better than LA in my opinion, so it's not a comfortable bet, but I don't hate San Francisco -8 or -9. That comes from Kat. And Matt, the NFL fanatic, coming in again. 49ers have won 4 straight years in the regular season against the Rams minus the postseason loss. Gotta love that. All right. Sunday night football, battle of the AFC East, the Miami Dolphins in New England to take on the Patriots. Look, that Miami offense looked incredible in week 1 up against the Chargers defense that at times looked like they weren't 100% sure what sport they were playing. But Tua Tagovailoa, massive showing. Tyreek Hill showing why he's inarguably one of the 2 or 3 top receivers in football. And look, he's right up there with the Justin Jeffersons and the Jamar Chases. Really, really just an incredible, such a unique talent. There's nobody that does quite what Tyreek Hill does. One of the most unique talents that I've ever seen, I think, in the game of football. This is tail end of back-to-back road games for the Dolphins, who were on the road last week in their win against the Chargers. And once again, I thought the Patriots played a very impressive game against Philadelphia. They were in that game for the vast, vast majority of it. Kendrick Bourne out here looking like an all-star with an incredible game. Mac Jones looking as good, I think, as we've ever seen him at the NFL level. I think this is a tighter, more competitive game than maybe some other people might think when they look at, oh my God, how incredible was Miami in week one. Miami, a 2.5 point favorite in this matchup, which means if they were at home, they'd probably be a 5.5 or a 6, maybe even pushing a touchdown. But they're 2.5 point favorites here on the road in Gillette Stadium, total at 46.5 points. I have to take the Dolphins because, again, I think the Dolphins could be a legitimate Super Bowl threat if they get the defense figured out. And I think their defense is better than what they showed in week one. But they got to get that figured out. It's got to be not just on paper, it's got to actually be on the football field as well. So I think they do get that figured out. But I think this is going to be a very entertaining matchup here in prime time on Sunday Night Football. I'm going to take the Dolphins on the road in New England to get the win over the Pats. I think the Pats just need that little bit more, but I was very, very impressed with what I saw from them in week one. If they continue moving in that direction, the Patriots are going to be just fine. But I'm going to take the Dolphins here on the road to get the second win of the season, start the season 2-0. Dolphins beat the Patriots. Against the spread, like I mentioned, the Patriots taking +2.5 at home here. I like Miami to win. It's a small price to pay, so I'm going to lay the -2.5 on the Dolphins. Total in the game set at 46.5. I do think this gets up over this, but this is a really, really good number for, I think, two defenses that are going to play as good or better than they did last week, depending on which team you're talking about. I'm going to go over on this, sorry, but not by a whole lot. It's only by like 1.5 points. I'm going to go 27-21 in favor of the Dolphins. Very entertaining football game once again, but give me the Dolphins to win, give me the Dolphins to cover, and give me a slight over on the point total. Now, because we have two Monday Night Football games, like we have one that starts, I believe, at 7 and one that starts in the normal time slot, if memory serves me correctly. So we've got two. So I'm going to quick fire through 3 games, and then we are going to kind of feature both of the Monday Night Football games. Interesting scheduling. I've seen them do that in week one, but it's interesting how this year they did it in week 2. In any case, let's fire through some quickies here. The New York Giants in Arizona to take on the Cards, two teams that were on the losing side of things last week. The New York Giants, I'm officially downgrading. I mean, I had the Giants in the playoff contenders tier, and no, thank you. No mas. No bueno. They were a team that didn't look like they knew what sport they were playing. Like, that was awful. It was awful all around. Daniel Jones looked like he was making his first college start, much less a pro start, much less not his first pro start. He looked really bad. And everything the Dallas Cowboys did worked. Everything they tried to do looked good. The offense looked good. They ran the ball well. They threw the ball well. The defense looked unstoppable in that game. So super, super impressed with Dallas and completely out on the New York Giants. So we're going to go ahead and downgrade them. And look, Arizona lost as expected. It was a fairly close game against Washington. I was really heavy on Washington in that game. They were my survival pick last week. I don't have a survival pick yet for this week. I haven't sat down and kind of done that math yet. But I thought Arizona, considering what the expectations are for the Cards, I didn't think they played terribly. And especially and Andrew just pointed it out in the chat, like defensively, they played significantly better than I think anybody expected them to. Now, granted, I can't say that Washington was an offensive juggernaut or not the offensive juggernaut that I kind of expected them to be from the jump. I have really high expectations for Sam Howell and Jahan Dotson this season. We didn't really see that in week one. hopefully we see that moving forward. But I was between these two teams, I was impressed with one and I was wholly unimpressed with the other one. I'm taking the Arizona Cardinals to win this football game. They're at home. I'm going to take Arizona to get this win. I am completely out right now on the New York Giants. Let's take Arizona in the upset, especially given the injury to Giants offensive tackle Andrew Thomas, dealing with a hamstring injury. I do not expect him to play. That's going to make a big difference. So we're going to take the Arizona Cardinals to win the game outright at home against the Giants. On the line, they're taking +5.5 here as a home dog. I am all for taking that +5.5 points since I like them to win outright. Total in the game set at 40. Got to go under on it. I don't know if the Giants are going to score a point this season based on how they played in week one. So let's take under 40 points in Arizona, New York. Let's go Cards 17, Giants 14. Arizona gets the win, their first win of the season, and they should be elated that they are going to win that. The New York Jets in Dallas taking on the Cowboys. And obviously, the complexion and context of this game has completely changed given what happened to our boy, Aaron Rodgers. Jets come into this obviously on the short week, having just played on Monday night. Both of these teams come in off of a win, but oh boy, Aaron Rodgers rupturing his Achilles. He is out for the season. Obviously, speculation is running wild that we may never see him play another down of football. I hope that's not the case. I sincerely hope that's not the case. This line jumped from Dallas -3 to Dallas -9.5 on the news that Aaron Rodgers was done for the year. That's how little confidence anybody has in Zach Wilson. I mean, I didn't think Wilson looked horrid when he came into the game. He didn't look good. I'm going to put it that way. And look, that's a tough spot for a young player to come into. It's back to being his team for the year. You got to wonder how like Alan Lazard and Randall Cobb might feel about that. Like, hey, we came over here to play with Aaron Rodgers and now we're playing with Zach Wilson for a year. In any case, I'm not going to put words in their mouths, but that would be an interesting conversation to have with those folks. Very heavily on Dallas here. No reason at all why Dallas doesn't win this game and go to 2-0. So let's take the Cowboys to beat the Jets. Now, I originally was going to lay the -9.5 on Dallas. I really was. Because I thought, man, they're shell-shocked. Are the Jets from this? How are they going to be ready for this? 9.5 points is a lot against a defense that is still, I think, as good as the Jets defense is. This could be a Super Bowl caliber defense. Like they could be on that level. So I think laying 9.5 points against them is just disrespectful. I really like Dallas's defense as well. So I understand why this total is where it is. It's at 40 points. But I'm going to take the +9.5 on the New York Jets. So I got Dallas to win, but I'm going to hedge my bets and take the points on the Jets. Total in the game here set at 40. Fairly good total, but I do think it gets up over where it needs to go. We are going to go over 40 points in Dallas, New York. Let's take 26. Let's go 26-17. They just barely cover the +9.5. 26-17. That's how we're going to go for the Dallas Cowboys. They get the win. They do not cover the -9.5. And give me the over on the 40-point total. And the Washington Commanders in Denver to take on the Broncos. The Broncos injury woes continuing with an injury to Greg Dulcich last week. It's a leg injury. I expect him to be out for multiple weeks. That's kind of the reporting that we're seeing now. I believe it's a hamstring for Dulcich. So again, anything soft tissue is never good news, obviously. So that's a significant part of their offense. I kind of have, and a lot of people have Dulcich as kind of a breakout player this year. Very valuable in fantasy in the off season or in dynasty in the off season. It was kind of crazy actually. Washington, like I mentioned, they got the win last week. The offense didn't look as good as I thought it was going to. The defense still looked pretty good. And in general, I think that defense is going to be probably the strength of that team this season. Chalk this up. I just don't trust Denver. I do not trust the Broncos. I think they've got good weapons. I think their run game is going to come along. They kind of have the impression now that, hey, maybe Javonte Williams is back and let's feed him the ball a little bit more. I think they're comfortable with that. And with Samaj Pirine as his backup too, they're comfortable in their backfield. But I think I got a feeling about this Washington team this year, and I got a feeling about them this week. They're the dogs, but I'm going to take them outright. Washington goes to Mile High and beats the Broncos. Now on the line, Denver's laying -3.5. I'm going to go ahead and take the +3.5 on the Commanders as the dogs because I like them to win outright. Total in the game set at 39 points, and even though it's one of the lowest totals, in fact, the lowest total of this week, I'm still going to stay under on it. I think defense is the order of the day in this one. So under 39 points. Let's go 20-13 in favor of the Commanders. Washington wins. Obviously, Washington covers, and give me the under on the points. All right. Before we look at the two Monday Night Football games, let's pop up here and take a peek in the chat. Andrew, Patriots upset Miami because their defense is bad and Hoodie will attack that. And if they slow down Tua and Tyreek, they'll pull this one out. Yeah. Slowing down Tyreek is a lot easier said than done. Tua threw for the fourth most yards in week 1 history in the NFL. That coming from Matt, the NFL fanatic. Chad is also on me with Arizona at +5.5. 4 wins in a row against the New York Giants. Very, very interesting. Andrew, Arizona played better defense than I thought last week, and it could be a 7:02 alert game. We got to love those 7:02 calls. Let's see. Cat is not really not on the Washington Commanders. Not a fan of the Commanders. 2 primetime games in the same slot is insane. Yeah, I'm not a fan of it, Gorian. Not at all. Taken away from each other, ESPN is not normal. It's true. Fanatic is taking Arizona against the spread. Can't come to take them straight up. Chad is one of the lucky ones who got the Cowboys at -3.5. Easy money, he says there. I think Carver may cost Aaron Rodgers or the Jets. They're just snake bitten themselves. Gorian saying Zach Wilson still won that game for the Jets. Showed a lot of heart. 100% agree. Let's see. The Jets have won 3 in a row against Dallas. Go figure. That comes from Chad. Russell Wilson needs to be out in Denver, says Andrew. Chad is on me with Washington at +3.5. Kat saying you don't trust Washington. My buddy Isaac said you might as well count this game as a tie. We're probably going to get one. Might as well be here. That's possible. That's entirely possible. And Gorian coming back in to help me out on the pronunciation of Greg Dulcich. Dulcich? Did I get that right, Gorian? Dulcich? See, I look at that and I'm like, oh, Dulcich, but it probably is not. So Dulcich. Okay, I'll try to get that right. No way this version of the Pats beats Miami even at home. That's what Gorian chimes in with. Okay, pair of Monday Night Football games. Here we go. And look, the stream portion is still under an hour 10, and we only got 2 games left to talk about. These shows are going to be shorter. I like it. The New Orleans Saints in Carolina to take on the Panthers. Obviously, a battle here of the NFC South. The Saints came up with the win last week against Tennessee, and I still wasn't crazy impressed. I think their offense played fairly well, especially in the pass game. I didn't think the run game was really anything to write home about. Carolina on both sides of the ball, I think, are about what we expected Carolina to be. This Carolina's second straight division matchup. So that's never an easy way to start the season. This is one of those matchups where, look, I don't have a lot of faith in either one of these teams, obviously. Look, I talked about how I had the Saints in the lowest tier heading into week one. Like my faith in the Saints is very low until Alvin Kamara comes back. Or if they go out for a second week in a row, get a win, this time get it convincingly, then I might have to look and be like, okay, I underrated the Saints. As of right now, I put these two teams on essentially the same level. And quite frankly, if I have to pick one of the two, I'm probably going to take the dog at home here in a division matchup. I'm going to take the Carolina Panthers at home to get an upset win over the New Orleans Saints. I do think there's a lot of areas where the Saints are the better football team, but at the end of the day, I still think Carolina comes out and gets the win at home. So we're going to take the Carolina Panthers at home to beat New Orleans. On the line, obviously, like I said, Panthers taking +3 here as the home dog. I like them to win, so give me the 3 points. I will take the +3. Total in the game set at 40 points. I think I got to stay under on this one, though this is a pretty darn good number. I think this is right around where the final number is going to be. But let's stay under 40 points in Carolina, New Orleans. Let's go Panthers 21, Saints 16. Very close, very competitive matchup. I liked what I saw out of Chuba Hubbard. He might be the backup. But I think he's going to beat Miles Sanders out of that backfield. I'm a big Chuba Hubbard fan, a big believer in Chuba Hubbard. I think that's going to happen, and I think that path continues this week. Let's take the Panthers to get the win, take the points, give me the under. And the final game of the week, the late Monday Night Football game. The Pittsburgh Steelers at home taking on the Cleveland Browns. Now, another division matchup, obviously AFC North. And this is a matchup of two teams that are dealing with some injuries coming out of week one. And they're both relatively significant. On Cleveland's side, you're looking at their starting right tackle, Jack Conklin. So he tore his ACL and MCL in week one. He is done for the year. Starting right tackle, done for the year on a run-heavy offense. That's a problem. Now, the Browns today did just sign, I believe it was Tynaseki, who was in Buffalo for quite some time. He's a capable offensive tackle. Don't get me wrong. Definitely a capable OT. Not on Jack Conklin's level. So he's a guy that should be on an NFL roster and now is again, but not on the level of a Jack Conklin. So that's going to mean big things for that Steelers pass rush. Except Cam Hayward. Cam Hayward is one of the other big injuries heading into this game. He has a groin injury. He is likely to go on IR. Surgery is a possibility. And from there, who knows what the recovery time might be. But that is a big hit to that Steelers front seven and the pressure and pass rush heading into a game like this. Not to mention, you've also got Deontay Johnson dealing with a hamstring injury. If I had to lean one way or the other on him, I'd probably lean out on him as well. So this is two teams that are not coming into this game at 100%. But Cleveland is another one of those teams that I'm going to give them a shift. I'm actually going to upgrade the Cleveland Browns based on what they did in week one. And once again, yes, it was a little weather assisted, but I still thought they put together a very complete football game all around, did Cleveland. And look, I had Cleveland in my rebuilding phase, I believe. No, I didn't. I had them as a fringe team. I'm still going to upgrade them. I think Cleveland could make some noise in that AFC playoff picture, especially with the big guns all struggling really at the start of the season, with the exception, I guess, maybe of Baltimore. But I'm still going to upgrade them. I think they still have the possibility to make some noise in terms of the AFC playoff picture. So I am going to give them an upgrade, and I was fairly impressed with them. The injuries do make this matchup, they do change the context of the matchup in a big way. They definitely do. But this is another one of those games that close division matchup. I'm pretty liable to take the home dog here. I think the home dog is live. I think Pittsburgh is, if Pittsburgh starts the season 0-2, that's real tough. And not that I think Pittsburgh is like a Super Bowl contender, but I do feel like Pittsburgh is a team on the incline. TJ Watt, by the way, came back and looked really good for them in their pass rush. He looked real good in that game. I still feel like they're a team on the incline. And for them, starting a season 2-0, or sorry, starting a season 0-2 would be a bit of a disaster. So I'm going to take them here as a slight home dog. I'm going to take Pittsburgh to get the win over Cleveland. Pittsburgh gets the win at home. So Pittsburgh taking 2 points here as a home dog. Obviously, I like them to win. So give me the +2 on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Total in the game set at 39.5 points. It's a very low total, but I'm going to stick under on it. I don't think either of these offenses were super, super impressive. I really want to see what the timeshare is in that Cleveland backfield. One of the more shocking things to come out of the breakdowns of like snap counts from week 1 was just how much of a timeshare Jerome Ford has in that backfield over Nick Chubb, who you look at Nick Chubb like he's a bell cow back, but like their split, I think it was like 51% and 41% or somewhere in that range. Like that's timeshare material, even though Nick Chubb, one of the elite backs in the league. So I've got to see how that's going to play out. If they're committed to doing the same thing with Jerome Ford that they did with Kareem Hunt, I don't necessarily think that's going to work out in their favor the same way it did with Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt, exceptionally talented back, very specific set of skills that I don't necessarily know that Jerome Ford also possesses. So I want to see how that's going to play out in the next couple of weeks. But I'm going to take Pittsburgh, take the +2, give me the under on the points. Final score, 18-17 in favor of the Pittsburgh Steelers. All right, folks, there you have it. Those are the picks for week 2 in the NFL. Hey, the stream didn't go bonkers this time. How awesome is that? That's it for me, Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, fueled as always by the incredible folks at Nerd Tees. I want to take the time once again to thank you so much for stopping by and watching live in the stream. I think we hit 11 or 12 concurrents, which is awesome. A couple higher than we had in week 1, which is awesome. And once again, the stream didn't crap itself. So we're very happy about that. Thank you so much for taking the time to stop in. We will see you again for week 3, and best of luck with those picks in week 2. All right, folks, there is the podcast version of the episode now completed. So let me know in the chat what picks of mine did you love? What did you hate? What's something that actually funny enough, Kat in the chat said, give us one bold prediction. So we're looking for like a bold prediction in week 2 or for week 2 or for the season as a whole. Let's do one of each. This will be a special post episode. It'll be my my after credits scene. Let's see. Bold prediction for week 2. Let's say how do we want to go about this? Does my numbers support this? Let's see. All right. Bold prediction. Bold prediction for week 2. We're going to go with 2 rushing touchdowns for Elijah Mitchell. That's the bold prediction for week 2. 2 rush touchdowns for Elijah Mitchell for the 49ers. If we're looking at season as a whole, one of those big 3 in the AFC. So we're talking about either Kansas City, Buffalo, or Cincinnati. One of those big 3 in the AFC are one and done in the playoffs. Whoop. One of those big 3 is one and done. One of them probably winds up getting the bye, but one of those 2 teams is going to lose on Super Wildcard Weekend. That's where we'll land on that one for now. Cat's like Buffalo. It's definitely Buffalo. They're so cooked. We can't say they're cooked after 1 week. It's just too damn early. But I like where your head's at because you're bold. You're bold. Yes, I can. No, it's my stream. No, you can't. No. It's going to be one of those you can't tell me what to do moments. All right. So, yeah, there we go. 2 rush touchdowns for Elijah Mitchell this week, and one of those big 3 in the AFC, one and done in the playoffs. Let me know, by the way, if you happen to pop back on and watch the VOD, like if you happen to miss a pick or something like that, let me know in the comments section below. I'm going to ask you the same question. A bold prediction for week 2 and a bold prediction for the NFL season as a whole. So toss that in the comment section below on the VOD. And for now, thank you so much for taking the time to watch the show live. Really, really appreciate it as always. We will see you again next Tuesday for the week 3 picks. Same time, 7 p.m. Eastern. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.